Good day, sir, and my dear classmates. My name is Manuel Rafael Flores, and we are the Group 1. We would like to discuss our group topic, which is the perspective or point of view from the various philosopher. Okay, but before that, what is philosophy? First, the word philosophy means love of wisdom. In a broad sense, philosophy is an activity of people undertake when they seek to understand fundamental truths about themselves in which they live, and their relationship to the world and to each other. Philosophy will scratch your head. Have you ever wondered God exists? Whether life has a purpose? What actions right or wrong? These are just a few examples of philosophical topics. We proceed. What will you get out about philosophy? The skills that you might get in philosophy are: we have critical thinking, argument skills, we have communications, reasoning, and the last is problem solving. But what's the point if you get that skills? Philosophy will allow you to justify your opinion, explain to people why they are wrong, and why you are right. Philosophy basically teaches you how to think. Justify your opinion. It means you need to stand with your opinion. You need to defend. Explain to people why they are wrong and why you are right. You need to argue and defend and to explain to them perfectly or prove to them your reasons why. And that's philosophy is all about. Now, we proceed to our 4 topics with my group, and they will discuss whose are the famous philosopher. Our 4 topic is: we have Greek ancient triumvirate, medieval philosophy, modern philosophy, and the last is postmodernism. And it will discuss all of them with my group mates. Thank you.
Ancient Greek triumvirate. The word triumvirate is a government by 3 persons who shares authority and responsibility. The word triumvirate refers to the 3 greatest founding fathers of philosophy: Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. Socrates was a Greek philosopher from Athens who is credited as the founder of Western philosophy and among the first moral philosophers of the ethical tradition of thought. Socrates was born on Alupis. He died on February 15, 399 BC. Socrates is known for his association with the Socratic method of question and answer. Socrates, he thought that people should care less about their bodies and possessions and more about their souls.
My topic is all about Plato and Aristotle. I will discuss first about Plato. According to Plato, the soul is immortal. He believed that philosophy of the self can be explained as a process of self-knowledge. Plato suggests that the self is fundamentally an intellectual entity whose nature exists independent from physical world. He believed in the existence of the mind and soul. According to Plato, soul has a 3 parts. First part is the appreciative soul, which include the basic needs of human. Those are the shelter, food, water, or appetites. For pleasure, security, comfort, and satisfaction. Appreciative soul with bodily desire. Next part is the separate soul. It's all about emotion and passion, being a hot-blooded, where we sit our source of action. This is the part of the soul that we will get angry if we will feel an injustice is being done. Next part is the rational soul. This soul is driven by the mind and our conscious awareness that things analyze and tries to decide what is the best and true for us overall. Plato believed in reason and rationality. Above all, he didn't believe that each part should have an equal say in your life, but the mind should lead and have the final say in any decision. My next topic is all about Aristotle. According to Aristotle, the soul is the essence of the self. For him, the body and soul are not separate elements but is one thing. The soul is the essence of the self, but it can exist without body. Without the body, the soul cannot exist, and the soul doesn't along with the body. Aristotle suggests that anything in life has a soul. His discussion about the self-center on the kinds of soul passes by a man. He introduced the three kinds of soul. First is the vegetative soul. It includes the physical body that can grow. Example of this are plants, which consist of power of growth and reproduction. Plants are living beings that have only this function. They are born, nourished, reproduce, and die. Therefore, plants are perfect example of living being that possess the vegetative soul. Second kind of soul is the sentient soul. It includes the sinful desire, feelings, and emotion. Example of these are animal, which consists of powers of mobility and sensation. Next, the rational soul is the what makes man humans and include intellect, what makes man and know understanding things. Example of these are humans, which have the power of truth and reflection.
Augustine of Hippo, also known as Saint Augustine, was a theologian and philosopher of Berber origins of the Bishop of Hippo Regius in Numidia, Roman North Africa. His writings influenced the development of Western philosophy and Western Christianity, and is viewed as the most important church fathers of the Latin Church in the patristic period. His important works include The City of God on Christian Doctrine and Confession, On the City of God Against the Pagans, written, often called The City of God, is a book of Christian philosophy written by Augustine of Hippo. In the early 15th century AD, the book was response to allegations that Christianity brought about the decline of Rome, and considered one of Augustine's most important works, standing alongside the Confession. As a work of one of the most influential church fathers, The City of God is cornerstone of Western thought, expounding on many questions of theology, such as the suffering of righteous, the existence of evil, the conflict between free will, and the divine omniscience, and the doctrine of original sin. Moving on to his another work, The Confessions, is an autobiographical work by St. Augustine, consisting of 13 books written in Latin between AD 397 and 400. The work outlines St. Augustine's sinful youth and his conversion to Christianity. Modern English translations of it are sometimes published under the title The Confessions of St. Augustine, in order to distinguish the book from other books with similar titles. Its original title was Confession in 13 Books, and was composed to be read out loud, which each book being a complete unit. Moving on to Saint Anthony de Mello, also known as Tony de Mello, was an Indian Jesuit priest and psychotherapist, a spiritual teacher, writer, and public speaker. De Mello wrote several books on spirituality and hosted numerous spiritual retreats and conferences. He continues to be known for his storytelling, which drew from the various musical traditions of both East and West, and for introducing many people in the West to mindfulness-based practices. He is sometimes called awareness prayer. De Mello's first published book, Sadhana, A Way to God, was released in 1978. Is a truly one-of-a-kind how-to-do-it book. The small volume responds to a very real hunger for self-awareness and holistic living. It consists of a series of spiritual exercises for entering the contemplative state, blending psychology and spiritual therapy, and practices from both Eastern and Western traditions. Anthony de Mello offers here an unparalleled approach to inner peace that brings the whole person to prayer, body and soul, heart and mind, memory and imagination.
Good day, sir. Before I proceed to my topic, I will introduce myself. I'm Erickson M. Daido. My topic is about René Descartes and John Locke. We will first discuss by René Descartes. René Descartes was a philosopher. He was born in La Haye, Turin, France on 1596, March 31. He died on February 11, 1650 in Stockholm, Sweden, in the age of 53. He was also a philosopher on the 17th century. He has some books that I will show the names of the books he made. First, Discourse on Method on the Meditation of Philosophy. Then second is Philosophical Writings of Descartes, Volume 1. And third, The Passion of the Soul. Then the last is Selected Philosophical Writings. And that's all. By the way, I will repeat. René Descartes is a French philosopher, then mathematician and scientist who spent a large portion of his working life in Dutch Republic, and initially serving the Dutch States of Army Maurice at Nassau. Then the next is John Locke. And John Locke is the most influential political philosopher then of the modern period. In the two treatises of government, he defended the claim the men are by the nature free, the equal claims the God have made all people naturally subject to a monarch. Then, by the way, before we continue, John Locke was born on August 29, 1632 in Rington, Somerset, England. And he died on October 28, 1704. As I said before, John Locke is the most famous philosophers and political theorist of the 17th century. John Locke's most famous works are Essay Concerning Human Understanding on 1689, then in which developed theory of ideas and his account on the origins of human knowledge in experience, and two treatises of government. Then first is edition published in 1690 but subsequently composed before 1683. Then that is the most famous work he has done. The nature of legitimate of government in terms of natural rights and the social contract. He also famous for calling for the separation church and state in his letter concerning toleration. Much Locke's work for characterized by opposition of authoritism. This is apparent both on the level of the individual parent, I mean person. Thank you.
I'm going to discuss the famous philosopher David Hume. Beginning with the treatise of human nature, Hume strove to create a naturalistic science of man that examined the psychological basis of human. Hume argued against the excess of innate ideas, positing that all human knowledge derives solely from experience. This places him with Francis Bacon, Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, and George Berkeley as an empiricist. David Hume was also well known in his time as an historian and essayist, a master style in any genre. Although Hume's more conservative contemporaries denounce his writings as work of skepticism and atheism, his influence is evident in the moral philosophy and economic writings of his close friend Adam Smith. Chant reported that Hume's work woke him from his dogmatic slumbers, and Jeremy Bentham remarked that reading Hume caused the scales to fall from his eyes. Science and as the inspiration for several of the most significant types of ethical theory developed in contemporary moral. Hume's subject is human nature. He summarizes his project in an attempt to introduce the experimental method into moral subject. In his day, moral meant anything concerned with human nature, not just ethics, as he makes clear at the beginning of the first inquiry, where he defines moral philosophy as the science of human nature. Hume's aim is to bring the scientific method to bear on the study of human nature. That's all. Discuss about Immanuel Kant. Immanuel Kant in 1724 to 1804 is the central figure in modern philosophy. The fundamental idea of Kant's critical philosophy, especially in his three critiques: the critic of pure reason, the critic of practical reason, and the critic of the power of judgment, is human autonomy. He argues that the human understanding is the source of the general laws of nature that structure all our experience, and that human reasons give itself the moral law, which is our basis for belief in God, freedom, and immortality. Kant introduces to unify the theoretical and the practical parts of his philosophical system.
Paul Churchland is a Canadian philosopher whose focus is on the idea that people should improve our association and use of words in identifying the self. He has this idea that the self is defined by the movements of our brain. According to Paul Churchland, since the brain damage alters a person's personality, Churchland asserts that the concept of self originates in the physical brain, not an invented mind. Churchland is one of the leading philosophers of mind. The Churchlands, Paul and Patricia, famously defend a position called neurophilosophy. Churchland's work is all about questioning the ideas and terms that are used to explain behavior or how a person feels, thinks, and acts in relation. According to Paul and Patricia Churchland, the self is the brain. Mental states will be superseded by brain states. Edmund Gustav Albert Husserl was a German philosopher and mathematician who established the school of phenomenology. In his early work, he elaborated critiques of historicism and of psychologism and logic based on analysis of intentionality. A philosopher is known as the father of phenomenology, a major philosophical movement in the 20th century through his creation of phenomenology. Edmund Husserl was one of the most influential philosophers of our century. Edmund Husserl was the principal founder of phenomenology and thus one of the most influential philosophers of the 20th century. He has made an important contribution to almost all areas of philosophy.
Maurice Panthi, 1908 to 1961, was a French phenomenological philosopher strongly influenced by Edmund Husserl and Martin Heidegger. Edmund Husserl was the principal founder of phenomenology and is one of the most influential philosophers of the 20th century. He has made important contributions to almost all areas of philosophy and anticipated central ideas of its neighboring disciplines such as linguistics, sociology, and cognitive psychology. Martin Heidegger is among the most important and influential philosophers of the 20th century. He has been widely criticized for supporting the Nazi Party after his election. Next, according to Merleau-Ponty, there is no hard separation between bodily conduct and intelligent conduct. Rather, there is a unity of behavior that expresses the intentionality, hence in the meaning of this conduct, inhabits the body adapts to the intended meaning that's giving itself a form of embodied consciousness. Next. Panthi believes the physical body to be an important part of what makes up the subject self. This concept stands in contradiction to rationalism and expressionism. Rationalism asserts that reason and mental perceptions, rather the physical senses and experience, are the basis of knowledge and self. Expressionism a person who supports the theory that all knowledge is based on experience derived from the senses. Postmodernism in Western philosophy, a late 20th century movement characterized by broad skepticism, subjectivism, or relativism, a general suspicion of reason and acute sensitivity to the role of ideology in asserting and maintaining political and economical power. David Lewis in 1960 to 2001. First, his contributions span every part of philosophy from logic and the philosophy of mathematics to ethics and the philosophy of literature. Second, his arguing that states of the mind are simply state of the brain functionally conceived. Third, he believed that everything in the actual world is immaterial. There is an example. David Lewis was one of the most important philosophers of the 20th century. He made significant contributions to philosophy of language, philosophy of mathematics, philosophy of science, decision theory, epistemology, metaethics, and aesthetics. In most of these fields, he is essential reading. In many of them, he is among the most important figures of recent decades, and this list leaves out his two most significant contributions. Second, in philosophy of mind, Lewis developed and defined at length a new version of materialism. He started by showing how the motivations driving the identified theory of mind and functionalism could be reconciled in his theory of mind. He called this an identity theory. Thought his theory motivated the position now known as analytic functionalism, and he developed detailed accounts of mental content and phenomenal knowledge that are consistent with his materialism. The synthesis Lewis ended up with is one of the central positions in contemporary debates in philosophy of mind.
Michael Foucault was a major figure in two successive waves of 20th century French, though the structuralist wave of the 1960s and then the post-structuralist wave by the premature end of his life. Foucault had some claim to be the most prominent living intellectual in France.
Eastern philosophy believes that the self composed of each person's personal identity, consciousness, and core philosophies.
is an illusion, they deny the existence of the independent identity of self that Westerners posit does exist. Eastern philosophy has always had a very similar goal to Western philosophy, that of making us wiser, less agitated, more thoughtful and readier to appreciate ourselves. However, the way it has gone about this has been extremely different. In the East, there is a non-dualistic conception of the self where there is no distinction between creation and creator, and man and the self is viewed as being part of a cosmic drama acted out by the divine creator.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, classmates. Thank you for your time and your presence. Thank you for listening. That's all. Until next time, bye bye.